So let's talk some Bitcoin action. So basically, there's not a whole lot to update you on Bitcoin other than the fact that this resistance level that I talked about as being resistance is still working in play. And so with Bitcoin, right, we have a very clear scenario here where we came up off of this level, right, low, and still slightly a higher low, but you'd consider it almost a double bottom, and we bounced right into this level and we've backed off. Now, notice how Bitcoin sold yesterday with the stock market. And I want to just make this point. I do think, and by the way, I do believe Bitcoin eventually hits 100,000. I think 150, maybe 250, maybe even higher, but years down the line. I do think it becomes the digital gold. I really do believe that. I think the fact that BlackRock's getting involved, that you're having big institutions getting involved, that's only going to add to the validity that it is a digital gold asset. But this is the kicker. It's a maturity game. You know, when you have an asset that literally debuted 14 years ago, that is a minuscule asset compared to what is the stock market or what is gold. I mean, think about how long gold's been around. Tens of thousands of years it's been used. So my point is this. You're still getting the fear to kick in selling. And that's my base case or my worst case scenario where if you're going to see Bitcoin break this level and then come down to 20,000 and break that level and potentially come down to the lows at 15,000 and change and break that level, the way that's only going to happen is if the NASDAQ starts to collapse. If you see 30, 40% downside on the NASDAQ, we even talked about maybe retesting those COVID lows, which would be about a 50+% drop on the NASDAQ. I do think at that point, because this is still influenced as a risk asset, it's still considered risky, you will see this go much, much lower. So keep an eye on that.
The U.S. is close to approving Bitcoin ETFs, a potential game changer for the crypto market. Canada's Purpose Bitcoin ETF attracted significant Bitcoin inflows, hinting at what could happen in the larger U.S. market. Strong investment flows have historically led to better Bitcoin performance, setting the stage for a possible rally. A projected 66% BTC rally to $42,000 awaits, driven by ETFs, although it doesn't consider all market variables. Paper Bitcoin trading volumes outshining actual transactions are shaking up the crypto world. Bitcoin's decentralized nature clashes with paper BTC's influence, leading to a unique challenge. Futures markets dominance affects the delay in launching spot ETFs. The tug-of-war between futures and spot markets is changing how Bitcoin operates. Analyst Benjamin Cowan predicts a potential drop to $23,000 based on historical patterns. Altcoins might face difficulties in the coming months, even without economic recessions. Historical data suggests a drop before Bitcoin's upcoming halving event in 2024. The 2024 halving event could bring significant growth despite challenges. Let's continue our enlightening discussion with Gareth Soloway.
Flipping over to the NASDAQ, take a look at this, guys. So here's the NASDAQ chart. And what we have here is this longer-term trend line, right? We go all the way back to here, and all the way over to here, and there's your breakdown. So you have a breakdown here. There's really not a head and shoulders pattern on this chart. You might say, well, why not? Kind of looks like this right here, and I'm just getting into some great education for you. So a lot of people would say that's a head and shoulders pattern. Incorrect. And again, this is why you have to educate yourself on head and shoulder patterns. Head and shoulder patterns are bearish. They're bearish patterns for the markets, but this is very important. The neckline, which is that line that you draw, it must be flat or inclining. So again, if we're looking at a head and shoulders pattern, right, it has to be flat when you connect it, or in this case, slightly inclining. It cannot be down. That is an incorrect head and shoulder pattern. It will not allow you to calculate the target out. And so going back to this chart right here, the reason why it's not a head and shoulders pattern on the NASDAQ right here is because if we look, shoulder, head, and shoulder, okay, where's your neckline? Let's draw it in. Here, you take the low, the neckline, basically the armpit, you draw it down to this low, and that is your neckline. That is an incorrect neckline. Okay, so again, just understand that, and these are nuances, and I want to explain this, guys, is that the reason why these little things, like you may say, well, that seems so inconsequential, right? But in essence, it affects your probability, and probability is everything, all right? And so think about this. If you had a 60% chance of winning versus 75% chance of winning on all your trades. In 10 years, playing those odds, is one person really, really rich and the other person is slightly rich? And the answer is yes. The one with higher probabilities is going to make you more wealthy over time by playing the higher probability trade always. And so the nuances mean a lot here in technical trading. It's also one of the reasons why so many people are like, oh, technicals don't work, da-da-da-da-da. It's number one, they don't understand that it's a probability game. So you're right, it's not going to work every time. Does it work 7 out of 10 times, 8 out of 10 times? If you do it right, yes. But it also shows you that people just don't grasp the fact that things have to be followed. The rules have to be followed. If they're not followed, you're going to end up losing more and more and more. And that's the problem there as well. Okay, so where is the NASDAQ heading? Well, short term, we have the NASDAQ 100 heading to this low. We're very close to that. If we were to sell off later in the day today, for instance, and I don't know if we will, but if we do, that would be your likely support level right there. It's around 355 on the QQQ. If we break through that, now you have a big air pocket. This is a big air pocket here, guys, where if we, and I shouldn't say if, I should say when, because we will break down, folks. Number one, we know from the Fed, higher for longer. No rate cuts till September that they're telling us at this point. Number two, we know Philly Fed showed a recession yesterday, even though jobless claims were lower. So data is starting to get a little wonky here, and that's usually leading up. And by the way, the jobs numbers are the last to go. So what we're seeing here, and this is a little bit of divergence from what I was just saying, but it's very, very important, is that the economic data is going to start to slow, right? Meaning Philly Fed and all these other things that show you the underlying strength of the economy. What's the last thing to go if you're a business? You start to see your numbers weakening. Okay, maybe it'll pick back up. Maybe it'll get better. Maybe this will happen. Maybe that'll happen. Uh-oh, it's not. And it just gets worse and worse. Okay, now I have to lay people off, right? So the jobs are the last thing to collapse while everything else is starting to weaken. And we know the housing market's a mess right now. Not that prices are collapsing. It's at a frozen state. But I will say this, guys. I do follow Zillow, and I do look at houses on Zillow to keep myself up on real estate. And I will say this, guys, is that I have seen more alerts that price drops on Zillow than I have in the last at least 5 years. Like every day, like 10, 15, 20 houses in my area, price drop, price drop, price drop. So it's starting. It is absolutely starting, but it's going to take some time. The real estate market moves much slower. Next chart. Let's go into gold here real quick, guys. I want to talk a little bit about gold. If we look at gold, gold continues to do just fine. Dollar being up, dollar being down, whatever it is, the gold chart continues its bullish consolidation. It peaked just above this level right here. We know that that's a pivot point, and then we even go to this one here. We briefly got above it here, and we sold off, so it's still struggling. If we get through this level, you'll have a little resistance right here, but ultimately, we're headed back to the all-time highs, all right? So again, watch that very closely. I remain unbelievably positive on gold. The more uncertainty in the U.S. markets, in the U.S. economy, in the global economy, the more likely gold outperforms. All right, now, is it going to outperform Bitcoin? I do think so. I do think from this point here, for the next 12 months or so, eventually Bitcoin way outperforms gold, in my opinion. But again, while Bitcoin is still a risk asset, it's likely that gold will be a more sturdy, safe haven asset. And I always bring this up, but remember, the central banks around the world are loading the boat on gold, and they are the ones with the printing presses. So if they're the ones with the printing presses, and they know what they're going to have to do in the future, which is print more money because of the debt issues in the world, in the U.S., in Japan, in China, whatever it may be, then guess what? If they're buying gold, it's probably an indicator we need to think about being in some gold as a longer-term investment here for the next 5-10 years, in my opinion.
Crypto exchange Binance and its CEO Changpeng Zhao, CZ, have filed a motion to dismiss the lawsuit against them by the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC. It is clear that the SEC's lawsuit has no foundation in the currently enacted securities laws, they argued, alleging, in attempting to claim regulatory power over the crypto industry, the SEC distorts the text of the securities laws. The U.S. House Financial Services Committee has passed the CBDC Anti-Surveillance State Act, the first anti-central bank digital currency legislative effort introduced in the United States. Congressman Tom Emmer detailed that the bill halts the efforts of the Biden administration from issuing a financial surveillance tool that will undermine the American way of life. That wraps up today's crypto news highlights. Stay tuned for more updates, insights, and analysis from the world of cryptocurrencies. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more engaging content.